Okay, so hey everyone, Mr. E here, and I am joined today by two fellow YouTubers in the Dark Tide space. Jefficus, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, I am Jefficus, and I like talking about Warhammer. It's really fun.
Good. Leaving that like you had something more to say.
I know, right? That was just kind of left
And
hanging.
you might have heard Joe Plays Games voice ringing through there. Joe?
Hi, I'm Joe. I play games, and I'm that unhinged lore woman.
Yes.
For Dark Tide.
Yes, very much so. And lore. I was not unhinged and very much so a woman,
No,
I
it's
guess.
okay.
So.
I'm unhinged. It's fine.
All right. Well, so we have assembled this motley crew today because what I'd like to do is go over some expectations and try and see how prophetic we can be about the upcoming update. And we will have a lot more information on the 22nd, and that's Thursday of this week. And before I say anything, I'm just going to go ahead and state that all three of us are in the Creator Fat Shark whatever program. However, we don't have any information yet. Not that we would share with you losers who are watching this video, but this is my way of saying to both viewers and to Fat Shark, who must be watching this, right, that we don't know anything, so this is all completely speculation. You can't violate our NDA if we literally don't know what we're talking about and we're just guessing. So I've got Jeff here to guess because he's played a lot of Warhammer games, and so he's got a lot of depth to draw from there. Joe is well-rounded in lore and games and lots of stuff, and she's just fun to have around. And of course, I only exist as a creature within the realm of Darktide. That's what summons me into existence. So I've got some concepts to break down here. So let's first talk about what do we think is actually coming. I think that I am 100% in the camp of this is a new class that is coming. Does everyone else agree?
No, I don't. I'm fully back on
think
team.
Yeah, it could be Gene Stealers, like a new enemy type. It could be a new class, or it could be another like, hey, this is just an escort mission. This is just an in-game
We're escorting a dog.
That's gonna happen, or you're just gonna escort a dog through a mission, and there's no actual real content here. We're just trying to hype you guys up.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
so I'm fully back on team Gene Stealers for a few reasons. Like having to do with the trailer itself, and then also I think slightly more likely than an actual class is that it will be an NPC who has a dog.
Okay. So how would what would the Gene Stealers like break us down? Give me the sell on why this is not a player class, but it is indeed Gene Stealers that are coming to Darktide.
Okay, so
As an enemy type is the assertion there that it's going to be an enemy type.
So
Okay.
as another faction, ever since Darktide released, especially compared to Vermintide 2, I've always felt like it was a big step backwards in like what we see faction wise on launch, because while Vermintide 2 had two very distinct factions, I do know that technically Admonition and the Mobian Sixth are technically two different classes. It really feels like a 1.5 faction game though. It's lacking a lot of variety that Vermintide 2 brought to the table immediately. I personally feel at this point, with the work that they did last year on bringing Darktide up to where it should have been, like with the crafting and just like all those quality of life things on launch, that right now at this point, a lack of another faction is the game's biggest bottleneck.
Okay, so based on the evidence that we have from the 4 seconds of teaser trailer, what of that speaks Gene Stealers to you? Or is it just like that's totally to the side, it's all external stuff that makes you think that?
So it's the external stuff, just because like I actually ran a poll both in my Discord and my YouTube community. And across the board, people were saying like a lack of variety is the thing that's keeping them from either not playing Darktide anymore or keeping them from playing it as much as they normally would. And then also, as far as in the trailer goes, you know, a lot of people were like, "Oh, well, you don't hear anything breathing whenever whatever we're seeing is running.
Mhm.
You don't hear anything breathing. You hear like the metal sounds and stuff, but you also don't see anything of the actual like thing's body or anything like that. I think that the trailer was made to be as nondescript as possible and like not give anything about what we're seeing from the perspective of
So they can
away.
really just blindside us.
I feel like that's
Well,
what makes
I
it
mean,
a good trailer, though.
yeah, I mean, like, shit, excellent job on their part because, like, fucking 4 seconds has gotten us, like, the Dark Tide community at large, just like talking about, like, what the hell was that? So that's a sign of a great teaser, but I do think that, because I mean, like, if you think about it, none of our rejects are ever like huffing and puffing, breathing. Like, you
Right.
don't have any of those sound cues like you do in a lot of other games whenever you're like running out of stamina or whatever. So I don't necessarily think that the breathless thing is out of place.
Joe, what specific Gene Stealer's enemy do you think this could be? If it's something that's like running really fast, able to leap onto a shooter like that, because my understanding of Gene Stealers is that they're a pretty humanoid faction, all in all, because they're like, you know, a little crossbreed between humans and Tyranids. And depending on the kind of generation of Gene Stealer, you have a large variety of different units, but a lot of them are more so like your typical like guardsmen. Like the shooters that we see in Darktide can reasonably just be cloned over to being Gene Stealer shooters, for example.
Yes. So if it were to be Gene Stealers, the thing that we're seeing the perspective of that like leaps onto the cultist, most likely it would be, I want to say it's a 5th generation. So essentially what happens is you as a person gets infected with a Gene Stealer, like the kiss of the Gene Stealer or whatever, and then you procreate and then have subsequent generations, and they all contain the same like Gene Stealer DNA. Then
Do you know the lore behind Gene Stealer?
I know Gene Stealer stuff. Yeah, I looked it up.
Okay.
As soon as it started being
you
mentioned in the
understand
lore,
that
I understand what the
one really horny guy is able to seduce like hundreds of women and just spread his seed
it really is
across the
the
entire
40k player's dream.
Yes.
Yeah, but like every 5th so they all come out looking
A little
essentially
off.
like every
Yeah.
every 5th generation or so there's like actually a what's called a pure eye Gene Stealer. So it's basically like technically it's born to like mostly human looking parents, but it's like straight up a Gene Stealer Tyranid.
Right.
So that's what I would assume it would be.
Okay. All right. So Jeff, where do you fall? I'm still like 99%. This is a new class. Where do you between new class or Gene Stealer or something else? Where do you fall?
I mean, I agree with Joe. I think that we need like a new enemy type in order to mix things up. Plus, from like a Warhammer game perspective, it's kind of lame to fight just one faction. I think that the Warhammer 40k games that we have right now are very chaos saturated. Like there's just chaos everywhere. Like Rogue Trader, the primary antagonist is chaos. Space Marine 2, primary antagonist is chaos. And of course, with Darktide, primary antagonist is chaos. So having a Xenos faction present would be amazing, and it would make sense in the context of the game because our rejects have talked about the second Hive City that's super hush-hush in Grendel's Warband and the crew in general. I think we all thought that, or think that, like Mortis Trials can lead to like a Mortis Operations type of game mode where it would take place in like this second Hive City, perhaps, where Gene Stealers are rampant. It would be a very good place for that. But I do think that the Easy W would be a new class, and everything that I've seen Fanshark do so far, it seems like they like to shoot for those Easy Ws.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of on the new class side of things.
If you were a betting man, what like ratios would you give it?
Probably like 70% or 75% new class, 25% new enemy type. New enemy type still on the table.
Yeah.
Just something that is in the background in development. Probably.
I totally agree with the new enemy class take. It's one of the main things that's holding Darktide's direction back. Is a lot of the enemies are very much like Darktide 1.0. We've seen like super limited editions of them, and like they're the challenge that the enemies pose is the game, right? But I think that a bigger thing that would get players back in is if there was more stuff for them to do, like fighting against enemies being more complex isn't gonna draw in players as much as here's a new player class that you can play as, new weapons that you can use. That having a new, like Hive City, a new enemy type, that would be a cool thing to wrap up the year with. I think that would be a very big thing to wrap up the year with. But I think that when you say that diversity is the thing that's lacking, like, variety of gameplay, I think that we've seen lately they've been focusing on reworking the Ogryn. They did some tweaks to the Zealot and Veteran talent trees, and so I think they've like figured out that a big complaint that players have, and think about how positively the community received the Ogryn update. Like that was a huge win. I don't think I've seen any other update for this game come out and the community be so wholeheartedly like, yes, this was awesome as the Ogryn update. So I think that hopefully they were already working on something else. And when you work up, sort of like get your gears going for revamping the Ogryn, as creatives, I'm certain that you all have the same experience, but like when you're creating for one thing, you have these spare ideas that you put on the side. Like this is something like Jeff, I don't know if you play D&D, Joe. You seem like the type who would, but like,
Yeah,
I know that Jeff and I do, like, so we all do. And like when you're DMing a game or when you're making characters or something, you always have those spare ideas that don't quite fit into what you're currently doing, and you put them in your sack for later. And so if these people were working on making the Ogryn rework and they had extra ideas kicking around, mash those up with something that's probably been proposed in the past, which they have to have had ideas for new classes in the past. It's just how creative people are, and then print a new class. I think it'd be the easiest thing to do for a really big W. So I'm like 99% that's new class. My evidence of this is multifold, I suppose. I had someone comment, I'll put it on the screen in the video. I had someone comment on my video talking about the teaser saying that they were given a tip on what the new class might be, and they said that it would start with an A. And so the Cyber Mastiff controllers are arbitrators. And I said, tell me your sources, just half jokingly, and they doxed their sources and said that it was Artheo from the design team. So Artheo apparently is the person who did the Ogryn rework and works on the 40k wiki. So I couldn't find any backup for that, but the assertion, the like how firm they were in saying that, plus just the casual, I was given a tip on what the new class might be. Like that first and foremost confirms new class, and that it starts with an A. So I think there's good evidence right there. And then, of course, Jeff, as you mentioned in your teaser trailer thing, there was literally just a crossover with Rogue Trader. And guess what new class is coming to Rogue Trader in, like, did it already come out, or is it coming out with Skulls?
It's all that information is already released, but it's coming out with the Lex Imperialis DLC, which I'm pretty sure they'll announce the release date for that at Skulls.
Yeah.
So it'll probably be in the fall. So
that class has both the dog and a Cyber Falcon. So that seems pretty cool. I don't think that we'll be getting a bird in Darktide. I don't know how the enemy would handle like aerial attacks like that. That'd be an interesting thing to explore. But
it may not necessarily be like a pet in that case. Like you can send out a Cyber Eagle, and it can be like the the Burning Head or Burning Skull. For
yeah. So it's like
that's really
where it just
around.
kind of goes from enemy to enemy. Like,
It's literally
around, just killing elites.
It's literally Mordecai's bird from Borderlands 1, where you threw it and it would bounce between enemies. Yeah, that's. I mean, I didn't incorporate that into any of my guesses, but that could be that would be a cool idea.
This is actually kind of a great segue, though. What do you think, if this is like an Arbites type class, like what blitzes, what abilities do you think?
So
they'd be able to add.
I want to
to the
start
game
with weapons, because I think that this is something that's going to be completely speculative. We have to be getting weapons, right? If we get a new class, we get weapons with it. Everyone agrees with that,
Oh, yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah, definitely.
and I looked at the other classes, and every class has at least, well, Ogryn's a special case, but every class has one, generally two exclusives. So we've got the Eviscerator and the Flamer for the Zealot. Am I missing any there? Thunderhammer. So the Zealot's actually got
Relic
a bunch.
Blades.
Oh, and Relic Blade. So the Zealot's got four. Veteran only has Plasma Gun and Power Sword at this point, right?
Shovel.
Oh, it's Shovel. Okay, so there's three. Wow. So like, and then what is
Elbor.
Hellbor? Is Hellbor a veteran only?
Yep.
Oh, thank
Mhm.
God.
You can't use
Yeah,
it
keep
on
that
Psyker
curse
or-
thing locked away on veteran.
Hey, they can make it really good by just making
They
it
could.
quicker to swap to. That's literally
well,
all they need to do.
And what does Psyker have for exclusives? They have the Force Great Sword, they have the Force Swords, and obviously just every staff.
Every
Every
staff.
staff.
Yeah.
But they don't have any other exclusive like ranged or melee. So that's a lot. I don't know. Like, how many weapons do you think are if we got a new boy here? How many weapons do you think he's gonna come with in his kit? Like,
oh,
to
they
play
got
with.
a lot, dude. They got a ton.
do you think?
Yeah, like bolt shotguns can be added to the game, and that could be exclusive to
Mm-hmm.
NRBDs. Riot shield with a like power maul or
Yeah.
shock hammer.
So
Shock
you
mace.
you dinged on my first claim, my first speculation, and how I don't know what I'm gonna rank this. I think this is like a 1 in 100 that they do this. One of the weapons will be a riot shield and a shock maul, and then add to that. This is like we're going to like a 1 in 1,000 odds on this. I think they'll use that opportunity to rework the shock maul so that the shock maul actually, like power maul and shock maul, actually do stuff. Because that would be, I mean, if you're touching it up and putting it with a shield, I think that would be really, really awesome paired together. And I think, like, if this is an arbitrator, then that's like basically a cop. You're like a canine cop. So I think like all the weapons should be sort of themed around something in that realm, right?
Oh yeah. Well, you also have like shock flail, shock glove. They already have a flail moveset in Vermintide 2. They can
True.
easily port to Darktide. And then for shock glove, that would be kind of the first like
What is
fist
that?
weapon they've ever done.
Is
Shock
it like
glove?
just
It's
literally
basically,
punching?
Yeah, it's just punching people. It's kind of the like a more humanoid version of like a Space Marines like power glove or
Gotcha.
power fist or whatever. Mhm.
Okay. And then you said the bolt. What the bolt's shotgun? What is it?
Yeah, so RBDs have these like bolt shotguns where they're kind of like the combat shotguns that we see in Darktide, but they launch bolter rounds, and you can kind of see
Gotcha.
this in the Tides. I don't know if you watch other Warhammer media outside of Darktide, but in the Tides they portray these RBDs who are escorting these Psykers who get attacked by Tyranids, and every single one of them has a bolt shotgun, and they start just mowing the Tyranids down with these weapons. Is really cool. But I think that if we got like a ranged weapon that's unique to them, it would definitely be that.
Yeah.
What do you think about adding like the riot shield or like a shield type weapon to the veteran and zealot? Do you think that would be something that would be shared?
That was
or-
that was one of the things I was talking about on stream the other day. Is like, okay, so there's two things here, right? You want to give this class something exclusive that incentivizes you to play them only that class can use, but also at this point, you are wasting like potential diversity by making a bunch of new weapons that you can only play on this class. If you make like 5 new weapons, like, yes, you can play them on that class, but if they were cross-class as well, then that would be more diversity for everybody. That's more win points. I think that like if there's a riot shield thing, it's gotta be crossover with at least zealot. That just fits really well for me. Everyone's always wanted like a flail and shield since the game started with the zealot, I think. you said the bolt shotgun. This is another one of I wrote down my things ahead of time, so I'm not bullshitting you here. But I said that there would be a shotgun, and I didn't know about the bolt shotgun, but I thought that it would have some sort of stun or airburst, like explosive shell. And then with that, I think that it would be a good time to do a shotgun rework. Since we just saw them tweak the shredder pistol, I think that maybe an exclusive weapon that only this class could use would be a riot shield plus a shredder pistol. Since we just saw a touch up for that. Thoughts?
Oh, that would be really cool to play with. Being able to have like your version of being an anti-gunner is you just have a shield. Like whenever you're aiming down sights, you're just shooting and you're blocking at the same time.
Because remember, the shredder pistol's new passive is that you can sprint and shoot at the same time, and like that kind of sucks because you can just slide normally. But what if you can block and run forward at the same time? That'd be pretty cool. I think that would really fit with like the aesthetic.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so how do we think like the dog is? Like, is it gonna be? Because I think, at least two of us are very much in the camp of there's a dog and it's going to be a playable or like a companion dog. Can it die? Or is it just like like Mordecai or like a Santa's skull sort of thing?
So what I would assume if this is a player class, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I still think it's pretty, like, I'm kind of evenly split between all three things still. But mechanically speaking, I would think that the dog could be commandable just because of like all the work that they did with Sienna's warrior skeletons in Vermintide 2 for the Necromancer class.
Could those die? I forget. Do either you know?
They do.
They did.
So,
They get
I mean, like they
crushed,
would
right?
just kind of disintegrate. The thing about a cyber mastiff, though, so there are definitely like cyber mastiffs that are like flesh and blood dogs with essentially like cyborg, augments and stuff like that. But specifically the ones that are used most often by Adeptus Arbites are mostly fully robotic, and then like their central nervous system is the only organic part of them that's been like fat grown or 3D printed. So I think that having your dog like either get decommissioned for like X amount of time or have them like quote unquote die, if it's a fully robotic one that won't be as like sad and traumatizing for everyone.
I wasn't asking about the potential
Yeah.
trauma levels of it, but I was asking more like from a gameplay perspective. Like, are we gonna have basically like a fifth character, like a fifth bot out there that we need to be picking up? But I could also see like, if they are fully mechanical, maybe there's like servitor, like mini servo drones that like put it back together after like a time. Not all of this has to be like within the lore. It could just be gamified and has like a cooldown where it gets itself back on its feet after X amount of time. I think it would be really annoying to have to go and like pick this thing up. Plus, if you make it vulnerable to dying, it's going to be useless at higher difficulties because it'll get blown away by the first like time there's a big pack of enemies.
Yeah, so with Sienna skeletons, like essentially I think they would just like crumble into bones or whatever, and then you just resummon them with like a quick cast. I could foresee them doing something like essentially having, if your dog takes too much damage, or dogs plural potentially takes too much damage.
Dogs. I didn't even think about that. I don't know why I didn't think about that, but that would be really cool.
Sienna has like
More
it's
than
like
one dog,
what?
impossible.
Impossible.
What? More than one dog? Sienna has like, I think it was 4 or 5 skeletons that she could summon at once, depending on. And honestly, so one of the things that kind of held me back from being fully on board on the dog minion class is that like mechanically speaking, your dog could just like, at least based on what's already in Darktide, would just go like tackle and pin down one enemy. And it's like, okay, that doesn't seem like it really brings much to the table. And stop me if I'm going to get into something that you're going to talk about later, but actually the Arbites cyber mastiffs are often kitted out with guns themselves. One of the more common ones is melting gun.
That'd be fucking sick. Your dog runs around with like a fucking melt on its back.
Yeah, so like melta guns have been a big ask in Darktide for a long time. It would be. It would
That's
be
the
so
kicker.
funny.
They give it only to the dog. You don't get to play
They
with
give
it.
it to the dog. Yeah, exactly. It's like, well, you can't have a fucking melt-a-gun, but your dog can. It's like, okay, I guess I'll take that. But like, hitting out a dog with a gun or a heavy las gun or something like that, which again is another option they can come with. That's been a big ask. Hitting them out with that would make them a little bit more viable
Yeah.
for like horde management as well.
So my thoughts on that, and I guess this is pretty much the next thing I wrote, is like, I think that like the overall power of the class's abilities and keystones and stuff is going to be tweaked a little. If they're doing balancing in the way that I would do balancing, like, you know, it would be tweaked a little lower. Like the abilities aren't going to be as bombastic as some of the other classes because they always have that passive of the dog. So either the dog does nothing unless you don't take certain abilities, or it does, like, you know, kill a couple enemies here and there and pins certain enemies for you passively. And in which case, I think, you know, because most classes have like the same like tools at their disposal. So if we give him all the same stuff, or like all the same quality and power level of stuff that the other classes have, how would he not just be a better veteran at that point? If it's got all, it's a veteran plus dog.
Mm-mm.
There is also the consideration that dogs are just coming as companions that you could have for any class as like a fourth, because that's what I think the thing is in isn't that how it is in Rogue Trader? It's like your class can specialize into it.
It's one of the subclasses. Like basically, there are different archetypes in Rogue Trader.
Yeah.
And it's one of the secondary archetypes. So the Arbites does not actually come with like a pet in Rogue Trader. You have to be, I believe it's called an Overseer.
Okay.
So you have to specialize into it. So you don't necessarily even have to be an Arbites in Rogue Trader to get access to the pet class, so to speak.
Right, I saw that like Psychers can be them too, and like then you can use your Cyber Falcon to like channel your Psyker abilities. I don't think we'll be getting that, but that'd be pretty fucking sick.
No.
Okay, so I want to go through. I've got some ideas for blitzes, like grenades here, and my first thought on this is that Darktide is getting a little bit grenade, like non-focused, because we've got Zealot, who has knives. We've got the whole class of Psyker. We've got Veteran, who prints his own grenades, and we've got Ogryn, who has rocks. So, like, if you're running Cluster Bomb Ogryn, pretty much all the grenades go to him every time. And so I thought that, at the very least, this class will have two choices where you actually do compete for grenade kits, because I think that those are, like, one of the most underused resources right now. Like, so many times I'm just walking by packs of grenades in games, even on Ogryn. I'm like, well, I didn't throw any, and no one else needs them. So I thought that maybe he'll have one that's like resource based, that's cooldown based, and then two that are going to use grenades. And I really want this to be true. I want there to be one of these that like gives your dog like a steroid. I called it in my notes Scooby Snack, like that just makes the dog go berserk, and like that could be the cooldown one, and just like gives it a big steroid, and it just runs rampant and starts attacking faster. My ideas for grenades, I think that the game could use another like area denial grenade, because the problem is like differentiating it from Ogryn's got cluster bomb and single big bomb. Zealot's got flame grenade and stun grenade, and then Veteran has single target and bleed grenade. So I think that like probably it's going to be something like area denial, like lingering effect. I thought maybe, and this is, tell me if this is a thing, if anyone knows, like a shock grenade. Like remember in Titanfall, there's like that electric grenade that like damages everything in it, and it can lead the enemies to be like stunned periodically while they're in it. Something like that I think would fit. I don't know if flashbangs are a thing. I don't know how even a flashbang would work. A flashbang would be pretty sick, but we already have the stun grenade, right?
I mean, they exist in Space Marine too, like the shock grenades. Like they totally exist. That is something that you can add in. Wouldn't that just be like a better stun grenade though?
I'm thinking
Yeah.
instead of the stun grenade, which like immobilizes everything in its radius, what if this what if the flashbang is like something you throw at ranged enemies and they just completely stop? But then that's just the smoke grenade, right? So like the smoke grenade
Yeah,
stops
yeah,
them.
yeah.
So yeah, you can see what I've had trouble coming with that one. But one that I definitely want, and listen, this is me manifesting. And if Fat Shark listens to this, okay, don't make me look like a fool. Put this in the game. I want there to be an Auspex beacon that you throw, and then the dog goes and does whatever is in that radius. So, like, you wouldn't want this to be something that you could do all the time. Otherwise, you just bring this class, and the dog does every mini game for you. He opens all the chests, whatever. But if it's a resource, and you're like, oh shoot, I'm getting forced away from hacking this console, use one on it, and the dog can go and hack the console while you're fighting because you can't get to the spot. I think that would be really sick, and having him be able to like go and open chests and like fetch the ammo or fetch the stims or whatever is in there and bring it back, something like that. Just that would absolutely tickle me. I really hope there's interactions like that with the dog. What do you think?
That's actually really funny because, as far as I understand, the way that Adeptus Orbites tend to communicate with their cybermastiffs is actually through like Vox and Auspex, kind of like remote control kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So that would make a lot of sense, lore-wise. I actually was kind of thinking if it was like a dog minion, having some kind of similar thing where like potentially instead of a grenade, you get a throwable that like essentially how to direct your dog on like
Yeah.
where to go. And
Yeah, it's
stuff.
just like a pointer, kind of like.
Yeah.
When you isn't what is it every grenade that has this? When you like hold it down, it shows you the trajectory and like where it's gonna land in the radius, right? So it's something like that, and it paints the targets in the area. Because this made me
Yeah.
think of like Space Marine and the tactical class that has the Auspex that like paints the whole area in green and highlights all the enemies and stuff, but just have it be for interactables in the environment.
Yeah, and then have it so like whenever you use the Auspex, you essentially like set your dog's mode, like essentially directive modes where like go find me pickups or go defend this area or go out here and specifically like hunt down, you know,
That would be
specials or
cool
something.
if he could be like toggled through different modes, like pets in World of Warcraft. There's like a defend mode where like they'll only attack if something attacks you. There's a mode where they just go and attack randomly, and there's one where they just passively follow. That could be kind of cool. Okay.
Well, and that's how some of the skeletons were set up too, because you know you could have them like defend a specific area or put them more on the attack.
I actually never played with that.
my
That was
God.
such a long break before it came out, and I think I went back to the game one time and played some Chaos Waste since then. But I never bought that
so
DLC.
let's establish like a mechanical baseline
Mm-hmm.
then. Maybe set up some expectations because with the Necromancer, so the ability is the summon.
Yeah,
Like,
you
the
don't have
ability
them
itself
outside of
is
the ability,
summon the
right?
skeletons. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
And they do last forever pretty much until they die, or until you use the ability again to re-summon them. The way that commanding them worked was you basically shared a hotkey with your potion button in order to pull up like a skull that you would use to direct the skeletons. So that's completely on the table for Darktide as well.
Pulling out
where,
the
like,
Auspex.
something could be
And, like,
holding the Auspex, basically using an interact key or function that's shared with another key or function to be able to direct the Cybermastiff or other pets if we're going to be getting other pets as well. Because we do have 3 abilities to consider. So.
Yeah. I based my assumptions on abilities around it just being the dog because that's all we've seen. I really think that if there was going to be a falcon, that you would have seen like a falcon because there is a visibility of the sky. It would have been super cool to have a falcon. Maybe that would have been giving too much away, I
Yeah, it would
suppose.
have been dead giveaway.
But it would be pretty fucking cool. So my thoughts is one of the abilities has got to be something like a charge or like getting in there, getting yourself into close quarters. You know, I know that's already taken by Zealot and Ogren, but it's such an effective ability, and maybe it could be differentiated by like maybe it does like a small AoE stun or something when you get to the targets, or like immobilizes them, because I understand that this class is basically like a military police, and so like arresting perps and like locking them down is sort of fits with the thing. I'm thinking that this sort of archetype would be the dog fights closely by your side, and then just kind of prioritizes targets that you're hitting in melee. A second idea, maybe these are all three. Who knows? I'm just gonna put them out there. We could also have the dog as an assassin type class, because I think that what we saw in the trailer, this would probably be that, right? The dog can be targeted from long range to go and attack like either specific enemies, and he'll prioritize it, like enemies in a certain area that you paint, and he'll target like elite enemies or whatever first. Maybe that could be responding to like your tags. He'll go for whatever is tagged, and then maybe being able to augment that for like, okay, go and like hold this position and having like a horde clear. And you said, Joe, like they can have weapons like guns attached to them that would help with the horde clear potential. It'd be pretty cool to have this dog that, like, while he's not going to hold a direction all by himself, you could paint him to like go stand at this door and like make certain that most of the enemies don't make it through there.
Yeah.
And just have the dog be like really, really effective, and in that sense, like trade off some of your player power to make the dog more effective. And then my last idea would be that we need something. Most classes have something that like helps the team. So we got Bubble, we got Chorus, we've got Shout. Sorry, Ogryn, you don't really. I guess Taunt. It doesn't really like buff the team or anything, but I'm thinking that the dog could like run a distracting pattern and like pull enemy fire to it and replenish toughness in like a certain area, kind of like guarding. Like you paint a zone and it stays within the zone, and as long as you're within the zone, the dog is like disabling enemies and distracting fire, and you can fight in there. So any other ideas?
Actually, that's actually a good point. Is do you think they give this class access to like gold toughness?
Don't say gold toughness.
Or do you think Fetch
Fuck
Arc
no.
is
I think
done
that's
with gold toughness?
gone.
Never again,
dude.
Not
I don't.
Gonna happen.
They have to be aware that gold toughness is like as silly as it is, right? With the Ogryn rework, they wanted Ogryn to be powerful. One of the things I would have done to put him on the level, just easy, quick and easy, would have been give him an ability that can generate gold toughness, because that's one of his big weaknesses, is that he could get caught out, and if he couldn't get to enemies to melee them, then he couldn't get any toughness back. Well, if you gave him some ability, they could just like instantly tough him up, which they did with Taunt in some regard. But if they'd given him gold toughness, I mean, that would have fixed that problem. But the fact they didn't choose to do that tells me that hopefully they are not looking to put that back in the game. Lesson. They nerfed Chorus too with the update, so that also says to me they are aware that these abilities, these like safety blanket abilities, are really, really powerful.
Well, I think at the very least, when it comes to different mechanics, you kind of see some of the different shock and stun mechanics with the current like shock mauls that we have in the game. And so if they're going to expand on that with like stun batons, shock gloves, etc., then it would make sense for different blitz and different abilities to play on that. Being able to shock a boss, for example, or stun a boss would be a really, really good and powerful ability. Or just being able to maybe command the dog to blow up. I don't know. Like you might have an ability where you literally just summon the dog, send it out there, it charges, and it just explodes. Like that would be pretty powerful.
Is there any lore backing for that? Suicide dogs?
No, absolutely not.
That would be horrendous. PETA would like to speak with you about your robot, your robot dog just detonating. That is yeah, go ahead.
You want to talk about like on-demand like area control? Like that's kind of how you do it, or you create a grenade that really knocks things back. You're sending a voice of command power knockback to a different area. But you also have things like web grenades, which just completely root enemies in place. That exists in Dark Heresy, I believe. And
yeah,
I think that when it comes to every class, we're kind of seeing this design philosophy. With Ogryn, you've got the rock, so you don't have to worry about grenades. With Zealot, you have throwing knives, so you don't have to worry about grenades. I wouldn't be surprised if the blitz abilities for the RBDs are grenades, that you have one option where you can kind of ignore grenade pickups
Yeah.
as well. So
Mm.
I could totally see that happening.
Something that I think that they could implement too, because earlier we were talking about Fat Shark tends to try to go more toward the easy W's, and a lot of what they've done with Darktide seems to be taking things from Vermintide 2 that either maybe it didn't land exactly how they wanted, especially with like the crafting mechanics from Winds of Magic being essentially like reimagined and reworked for the crafting system in Darktide. Something that I think that we can look to for classes as far as like mechanics and everything goes is the bonus classes from Vermintide 2. And there's a couple things that those classes, like some of those classes brought to the table that are like starkly missing from Darktide. One of which I would say is like
You mean the DLC
Krillian.
classes?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Krillian's Sister of the Thorns, like her zoning walls and stuff like that, where like enemies literally cannot pass like that blockade and stuff. I could see like the web grenades, like you mentioned, Jefficus, that being implemented as something that just like hard stops enemies in a specific area for like X amount of time, and that being something that like your dog could implement.
Yeah, maybe that's the idea that I was talking about, like the area denial dog, and like painting him on a zone, and then like he just rips the Achilles tendons of every enemy trying to get through it, and then they can get through it, but they're like slowed really heavily, like trying to get through a certain area, because could they get through? They couldn't get through there was one of them they could walk through, right? And they would take damage. I can't remember about how the bushes.
It's been so long.
No, you can walk through it, but you're really slow when you walk through it. That's what it is. Yeah, you like go slow.
For Krillian,
yeah, for Krillian, yeah. You like have to push through the bushes, but the enemies can't get through.
Yeah, you can walk through it.
Yeah, yeah. I would love to see, because that Darktide's levels are so much more like thoughtfully laid out, I think, than a lot of Vermintide. Vermintide is very big, open areas. I mean, we all have nightmares of Athel Yenlui and stuff like that. So it's really hard to like direct the combat encounters. Rats just seem to come from fucking everywhere. But in Darktide, like a good portion of skill and like how you fight fights in the game is taking a good position and holding a set of doorways or holding a hallway or something like that. So a class that like excels at doing that sort of thing could be very valuable. And I know that like they've kind of tried to do that with the Psyker having the single, like the barrier, the panes of force field, but that just sucks and it doesn't like stop anything. So I'd love to see something like that where the really like big area denial, defensive energy.
Go ahead. The other thing missing is Saltspire's bubble shield. So essentially, like that, I think would help like reduce your damage or prevent damage for a short amount of time. And I think you could also spec it into a little bit of healing at the same time.
I don't see, that was one thing that I was thinking about, like is there potential for a class that can do some sort of healing support? But I think that since like Vermintide, like your health is your health in Vermintide, and you have like temporary health. But since you can always take damage as long as you have toughness in Darktide, I think that like healing the health underneath that, I just wrote that off as like that would be too broken. Like there's a reason that what's it called? Like Natural Bond doesn't exist in Darktide. Everyone would be running Natural Bond if that was a thing, because you would just always have max health. It'd be insane. Okay, so, and then lastly, just keystones in general. These are very loose ideas, because I think that they did a really good job with Ogryn in differentiating playstyles with the different keystones. Zealot needs some help there. All Zealot's keystones are just like move faster, deal more melee damage, and Veteran, people don't even take his fucking keystones, so hopefully they got these. I'm thinking that one of the keystones will really lean into synergy with your dog, and we have that, that perk that's in, or the talent that's in the Psyker tree that's like, okay, when you hit an enemy with force, or with magic, whatever it's called, and then you hit him with regular weapons, each one buffs the other, right? So it like stacks when you're dealing damage with psychonetic powers, and then it stacks when you're dealing damage with regular weapons to the psychonetic powers and back and forth. I think it would be like such an easy pick to have there be something, a talent, probably more likely a keystone, that when you attack a target, your dog prioritizes attacking it. When you attack a target your dog is already attacked, you get a damage boost to that target.
Yeah, that would make sense. It's so hard to guess what keystones could potentially exist because you have things like that are super basic, like heavy hitter, where it's
Right.
literally just you're an Ogren, you do more damage and attack faster. The more you attack, here you go. And then you have other complex keystones,
Disrupt Destiny.
like Disrupt Destiny,
Yeah.
where it's like, hey, a random enemy is gonna get highlighted every few seconds, and you have to kill this to get your benefits.
Coincidentally,
So it's super
coincidentally,
hard to
I labeled one of them as Scout. I think that like tagging enemies and having information could be something that the dog does really well. Like if it's not attacking, it can be like labeling like incoming specials or something like that. This might be cribbing in on the territory of Executioner's Stance a little bit, I guess. But having a dog that like it plays away from the group and it pings priority like targets like specialists and stuff, and it like labels them when you come in and just gives you that information, and then when you take them out you get some sort of reward. And then the final one, the one that I really hope exists, I don't know if either of you have played Warframe, but in Warframe there are these animals called Kubros, and they're dogs, and they can dig. They just randomly will like just dig on the ground on the fucking metal that's the spaceship floor that you're in, and they'll just pop up some resources for you. So I was thinking that like this utility dog keystone, or you should, somewhere in there should be some talents that you can spec the dog into more utility, where like there should be some sort of trade-off, but maybe the dog can be used to get a ranged rescue on an ally, or to like help an ally up off a cliff, or they can just poop out a certain amount of ammo or stims or something. Not health probably, because that breaks the economy, but like something to wean that dependence on survivalists to like always have a veteran for your ammo consumption needs. I think that would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, I think that they should go with the, you know how the Warden as the ranger was able to drop like potions and
Oh yeah,
bombs
printing,
and
just
everything,
printing extra
just
resources.
printing other items.
Yeah,
I would
that
love
would
to
be
see
able
more
to-
stims.
Yeah, being able to
Yeah.
have more access to stims and access
'Cause I'm
to
always holding
droppable,
those fucking
like,
things.
grenades would be really cool. That'd be
Yeah.
a really good way to incentivize like stim usage and stuff, and basically make it so that you're not seeing the same 3 weapons or whatever
Right.
in a run, because
Mhm.
running stims unlock the potential for other weapons as well. That would be pretty massive. And we actually completely skipped over auras. We didn't even talk
I
about
didn't
coherency
come up with any
for this
ideas for
class.
auras. What do you think? Are they gonna go more interesting, or are they just gonna go like 5% team damage?
I could see block efficiency being one of them, like a big, like 30 to 50% chunk for block efficiency
Okay.
for anyone in coherency. Just to kind of play off of like shield usage and stuff like that. And everything else, I'm not sure. I don't know if Fentric is brave enough to experiment with something like another survivalist aura that is like so absolutely necessary in like Havoc 40, because if they do, then everyone's just gonna run it. Like
It's-
everyone's gonna run it all
yeah,
the time. 'Cause
I was
it's
thinking-
a massive game changer.
I was thinking like grenade, like this class, like having a grenade regeneration aura or something like that. But that's
No
already
way,
veterans
that'd be
thing
nuts.
is to print grenades, and it would be too nuts. And I think survivalist only exists because it's a relic of like the earlier phase of Darktide, where like the idea was that you would have one of each class on the team, and that the only like you could fight, and the reason that survivalist exists as a concept, I learned this by talking to one of the playtesters who like worked in the beta, is that they were worried about players using up all the ammunition on the level and not being able to handle ranged threats, because the idea was that like most players would be shooting for like the early era of Darktide, as you saw, like all the characters were guardsmen and stuff like that. The idea was that like
Yeah.
you'd shoot your way through most encounters and you'd pull out the weapons when things got really hairy and stuff got in close. And they're like, well, what if players are really slow and bad and they use all their ammo. Okay, we'll give them survivalist. And so that's how it started existing. But it's just gotten nerfed and nerfed and nerfed over time. So I don't know how many
Survivalist
hope
is
we'll
one of
get
the reasons why veterans go to that left side of the tree there. It should honestly just be intrinsic to the veteran class
Well,
for
it is.
themselves. But they shouldn't
Oh, for
provide
themselves,
it
yeah.
for the team.
Yeah.
I don't know why Fat Shark is so scared of giving veterans unlimited ammo when the concept of that exists in Vermintide 2. The Bounty Hunter is able to have unlimited ammo,
Mm-hmm.
the Waystalker is able to have unlimited ammo, and the Huntsman are all able to have unlimited ammo. So I'm not sure why they're shrieking away from it.
I don't know,
But
because
you
most of the
can
weapons are
give
super
this
ammo efficient anyway.
class, yeah, you can give this class access to. I don't know if it would be an aura, but maybe a passive or a class intrinsic where you just spawn supplies, like
Yeah.
every few specials or whatever, or maybe whenever you kill a boss, you spawn grenades. Whenever you kill specials, you have
Yeah,
a
some
chance to
sort of
spawn stims,
non-healing
whatever.
item, yeah, would be
Yeah,
very nice. Because I always feel like I'm sitting on those things and not using them because I just don't know when you're gonna get them. But if you had a class that's like reliably printing them, then yeah, I'll use a stim. Yeah, I'll use an extra grenade in a fight. That sort of stuff. Any other ideas about like potential stuff with the update? Because it's probably going to be mostly just whatever was in the teaser. But any other reworks or things that you think or are hoping for? I know we heard Gene Stealers. We're really hoping for the addition of a whole horde of
I think
new
I think
enemies.
we'll see a new map, right? I think that's kind
You
of
think?
like what Fat Shark does.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
we're probably getting a new map. Typically they do one for their summer update.
Oh, I guess that's true.
And-
We got Mortis
yeah.
Trials. That counts as a map, right?
Kinda, yeah.
Kinda. But I mean, this time last year, so at Skulls last year was whenever they announced Secrets of the Machine God, which was Gloriana
Gloriana.
Part 1. And
Yep.
they
Gloriana's
have
good.
kind of been doing a cadence where like they'll put something out and then a year later that thing gets iterated on. So I kind of am expecting Gloriana Part 2.
Going back to
Oh,
the
more about
Abyss.
the steel. Like-
Well, because every level has gotten, typically three missions in
Mhm.
that map setting, and then like the big thing about Gloriana is that it was lost hundreds or probably thousands of years ago.
Yeah.
You can tell from the entrance point where it's like called Hope's End or something like that. That like living space, something happened there, however many years ago. Now this place has been fully encased in ice. So like what happened? It couldn't have had something to do with the Nurgle incursion because it happened so long ago. What's under the ice?
Yeah.
Now that we've turned on
Yeah.
It
that
does make
machine-
sense that like they would make another map just from like using the assets standpoint too. Like they made all these icy and snowy assets and like just for one map, probably not, right?
Well, and also I'm fully expecting now that we have turned back on the Machinina Gloriana itself, and like because that's why the whole place froze over was because they had this
Melting.
most likely superheated plasma thing creating
Mhm.
true Mobian steel. Now that that was turned off and the cooling system was on, that's what froze it over. So now that the machine itself is back on, that's probably going to start thawing it out.
Oh.
Yeah. Plus, we need a continuation to Swagger's story because that dude's only appeared in like one mission, and
Right.
he
And he's a
doesn't
Gene
voice
Stealer, right?
anything else. Maybe.
He covers
I
the
think
entire
he,
phase. His like homies in that one thing are 100%, right? They have like Gene Stealer like facial deformations.
That
I think
was
if they really wanted to be interesting, they would make him an Eldar or something. That would be extremely interesting.
He's too short.
Yeah, he is too short.
I think that he's from House Margrave. I think the fact that he's so
That
well
makes
spoken,
sense, too.
well educated enough that he knows how to like work the machine and
Yeah,
everything
he's-
because like that machine is like
Established.
probably one of the most holy relics for the Adeptus Mechanicus in all of the Mobian domain. So like how the
True.
fuck does Swagger know how to use it? And it's been lost for however long. He has to be like in the know, well educated, he's well spoken, he's charming. Literally everything about him screams like rich bitch to me.
Speaking
Like
of,
upper tier nobility.
speaking on like a lore notion, if this is indeed, this is a I guess a point against this being an arbitrator coming to the warband. How would someone or someone like that fit with the rejects? Is there like a could you see a
It'd be
pathway, or
super
just
easy.
say like, hey,
how
this
does
is
how does a zealot preacher end up with the rejects? How does someone who's completely devoted to the emperor end up with the rejects? Like, you literally just do something that a superior gets offended by, and you just get put in prison.
But
Like,
how
that's
they
what happened to the preacher.
who
Probably.
gives them
That's what
their
happened to-
cyber dog back would be my question. It's like, okay, yeah, you went to jail, but
I think that's like semantics, because
yeah,
they're giving
they
like,
let you out.
veterans
It's like
plasma guns. They're
one
giving
pair of
relic
jeans
blades to
blue.
these preachers.
Oh, true. Yeah, they're giving
Like,
us they give the psychers
they're
4
giving
stabs
us-
immediately upon releasing them. It's like, okay, yeah, just go blow up the world.
dude. Yeah, they're basically giving you access to equipment that they would never give you in the Astra Militarum unless you'd been alive for like 200 years or
Yeah.
whatever. So it's just part of being in an Inquisitor warband, and we're on a Rogue Trader vessel. So, like, you can get your hands on all these things because we're working with a Rogue Trader. So,
Yeah,
Yep.
that's very true. Another thing too that I've always thought they could do, because for the longest time, it was funny that you said that somebody said the next class begins with an A, because like there's a lot of things out there in 40k that begin with Adeptus.
Name
One
3.
of them being
yeah.
Adeptus Mechanicus.
Okay.
And I have always been a big fan of the idea of having an AdMech player character added to the game. And a lot of people are like, well, how could you explain them being, put in with the rejects? And it's like, well, there's a few ways. One of the ways that they could do an RBDs thing is kind of like gate it off as a, like, you unlock it after hitting level 30 with at least one character kind of thing.
Mhm.
Kind of like they do in World of Warcraft.
It's Death
for
Knight. Yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. That kind of thing where it's like, yeah, okay, you get to level 30, so then because that's called your quote unquote trust level within the warband. And so it's like once they fully trust you, then you can start like conversing and like, connecting with these other people.
I don't
think
know
a lot
about
of
that, just from
people-
their perspective. Like, they still want new players. They want players to come back, and like if you have to be level 30, like that's gonna be like fuck that for like some percentage of players. So
You
I
know-
think a lot of people who, whenever you think of Adeptus Mechanicus, you immediately jump to like Skitarii, or you immediately jump to Tech Priest. This doesn't have to be either of those things. When you play Rogue Trader, they're just tech adepts all over your ship. Like, just dudes who are really good with tech and who've got like different enhancements, like cyber enhancements and stuff like that. This could simply be one of those guys where maybe they were affiliated with the Mechanicus in the past, but they're not anymore, and they just did something somewhere to get thrown on the prison ship that everybody else got recruited from. So it's totally within the realm of possibility.
and
I
yeah,
just think that with the
even
Rogue
if it's
Trader
not.
crossover, like it would be a missed opportunity to not do an RBD's theme class.
Yeah, that's true. And like it's kind of like that like Stan Lee thing where it's like, which superhero wins the fight. It's like whichever one the writer decides. It's like, the writers can just decide to make it work for some arbitrary reason. Like if it's rule of cool above all. I don't think that like, despite what some people say, I don't think that well, I'm blanking on the name of the people that own the 40k license, but I don't think the 40k masters are like breathing down their necks and saying like, no, you can't do this. I think there was definitely a period of time when the game was being developed.
Games Workshop.
Yeah, where Games Workshop was saying like, okay, no, we know that weapon customization was nixed because of a Games Workshop request, but I think that like those days are over because like we are so far off of like the beaten path, like we're so far out of like whack with lore. Doesn't make any sense how powerful these rejects are. They're like 1v1ing demon hosts. Like if the lore masters are supposed to come in here and like shut this whole system down over any minor infraction, it would have been done long ago.
That's not necessarily true.
Huh?
That's not necessarily true.
What do you mean?
It depends on the demon host, because when you read something like Eisenhorn, the demon hosts are crazy powerful. Even an entire band of inquisitors with holy relics have trouble defeating the demon hosts. In I think it's Hereticus or Malleus. In the book Malleus, Eisenhorn basically has to get like a super special Force Sword in order to deal with these things. Like, Purity Seals aren't enough. Regular weapons are not enough. Even if they're Plasma, Melta, Flamer, whatever. I think he stabs them with a Power Sword and it basically shrugs it off. So, Demon Hosts vary in strength depending on the demon, for sure.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna say. Is like demon hosts, especially specifically, are incredibly variable. So like a Nurgling is considered like one of the bottom tier, you know, lesser demons of Nurgle. You could, in theory, turn a Nurgling, like bind a Nurgling into a demon host. Like the demon hosts that we're fighting in Darktide, most likely in a lore perspective, are not actually nearly on the level of power of a lot that a lot of people assume that they are, that they're some like, you know, massive, unholy, like well-known demon. They essentially, it kind of seems like Admonition are taking like, you know, fucking Steve.
Joe Schmo, yeah.
Yeah, they're like, this is Steve the Plague Bearer, whose, you know, known deed is that he didn't have to wait in line at the DMV once, and we just happen to know that, so we're summoning him into a demon host kind of situation.
Yeah.
Well, my point,
where the
I guess,
suspension
is
of disbelief comes in is the massive amounts of enemies that we fight.
Right.
Like, it's
yeah.
We've killed the population of this planet several times over.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Like, where are these people? I mean, I understand that there's like trillions of people in Atoma, or like in Tertium, right? But
90 billion in Tertium.
Is it 90 billion?
90.
This is a secret war.
19. Okay. So like
this is happening in the shadows.
But they're like, you know, there's 1,000 of them in one closet. They just come pouring out of the holes. How do they all find us? Good.
It's really funny juxtaposed against some of their short stories that they have on the website, because like it'll be like, okay, what was your battle report from this encounter? And he's like, well, we lost 5 of us and killed 3 heretics. And it's like, really? That's the expectation of like how this should be going.
They're playing on sedition level, yeah.
Yeah.
Those guys are fresh recruits. All right, folks. Well, I think that's all the discussion. Unless there's anything else, any other predictions for the patch? We got maps, new weapons, new class, Gene Stealers this time for sure. And Jeff, do you want to wager any stakes? Joe and I have a running bet. If it's Gene Stealers, I'm making a Joe Plays Games class breakdown. And if it's dog class, then she's making a mystery lore video.
Oh my gosh. If it's,
I don't know how you invite a third person into the.
I don't know, because how do I?
Well, he could have the cynical third option, which that it's an NPC that they're going to introduce for a new one.
If it's nothing, then nobody does anything, and we all hang our heads and we go play a different game.
We just all uninstalled Darktide.
Yeah.
If we don't get a Melta type weapon by the end of the year, I'll get Tanner Lindbergh to play again.
Okay.
I'll get him
wow.
back. I'll bring him back.
Stakes. All right. Good.
Yep.
All right. So there's our stakes, guys. Okay. So we've got Jefficus. He's linked in the description. Subscribe to him. 40K content in general. Joe Plays Games, Lore Mistress Extraordinaire, linked in the description. Check her out if you are curious what the fuck is going on with Darktide. Literally, that's the name of her show. And Mr. E. Okay, and that's it. All right, bye everyone.
Praise the sun.